All right. We are live. Welcome, everyone. Very, very excited about this conversation and about sharing with you some things that I've learned and having my special guest share with you. So, thank you for taking the time and tuning in. We're broadcasting live across several platforms. So, thank you again. So, I'll start just by introducing myself, telling you why I'm here and why this conversation is important to me. And then we'll kick it off and we'll hear from a couple other guests. And then we'll come back and I'll tell you about some exciting things we have coming up and we'll wrap it up. So I'm Cal Misener. I'm a coach, speaker, author. And why is this conversation important to me? I think in this day and age of technology, AI, social media, in social media in particular, the thing that's supposed to connect us more than anything else, I think sometimes we feel more disconnected than ever. And so to me, it's really important to come together and talk about connection, about authenticity, and how to live a life that's true to us, right? Not what society thinks or what others think, but what's true to our soul and to our heart. And so why am I here? Why is this important? I'll tell you a little bit about my story. So I've been for most of my adult life, thinking about, what is it that I truly want? How do I want to live my life? And started to feel and hear these little whispers of my soul and whispers of things that I should be doing, perhaps you've heard these whispers, right? Like, I really need to change my vocation, or the place that I'm living is not really doing it for me, or perhaps there's some relationships that I know aren't the best for me, but I continue with them. And I don't know about you, but I didn't always listen to those voices. And so I started to and was on that path. But August 17th of 2020, the path changed for me significantly. And I was laying in bed. It was 12:30 a.m. Sunday morning on August 17th, like I mentioned. And that day, the day before, had been the hottest day of the year. And so I left the windows of my truck open and I went to sleep, was laying in bed, and I awoke to thunder claps that sounded very close. And I heard rain and I saw flashes of lightning. And I thought, oh my God, I got to go close the windows of my truck because they're open. And so I literally got out of bed. This might be more info than you need, but I had nothing on but my underwear, slipped on a pair of Crocs, and I went out to close the window of my truck. And so I put one foot on the running board and I reached in the window to turn the ignition on so I could roll up the windows of my truck. And just as I had done that, bam! Like the loudest sound that I had ever heard in my life. And at that moment, I realized that I was being struck by lightning. More accurately, my truck was being struck by lightning, and I could see the undercarriage of the truck turn completely orange, and I could feel the electricity going up one leg through the truck, up one leg and through the other leg. And I could feel this intense vibration and the energy building. And all of a sudden I was thrown back off the truck about 12 feet, landed on my back. One Croc went one way, one went right across the road. And in the blink of an eye, I went from feeling one way about life to feeling quite another. And I realized that all of these things I'd been thinking about, it was time. It reminds me that moment from 1 minute feeling very healthy and very secure and confident to the next moment lying on my back. At the time, I thought both of my legs were broken. I think just because of the intense surge of energy and the incredible contraction of my muscles, I thought they were broken. I couldn't move them. And, when you hear people talk about life flashing before your eyes, that's literally how I felt. 1 minute I felt one way, the next minute I'm lying on my back, feeling like my legs are broken. And I knew at that moment that my life had changed. And what I was reminded of was one of my favorite Taoist quotes is, the problem is you think you have time. And I recognized that all of the little whispers, the things that I had been hearing, my soul speaking to me about the things that I wanted to do with my life, it was time. Or more accurately, time was running out. So it was time to get on with these things. And so, through that, and I'm sure you noticed the name of this event is Radical Reconnection. And at that time, what it meant for me was radical realignment. And again, I'd kind of been listening to these whispers of my heart. But at that moment, lying on my back on the road, thinking my legs are broken, I looked up at the sky and said, okay, universe, I get it. I'm not a real smart man, apparently. It takes me some time to get the message, but I'm paying attention now. And it led me on this path of realigning things in my life, right? Really listening to my heart and my soul and what are the things that I want to do, and started down that path. And that included a number of things, from shifting the work that I was doing to the place that I was living to, looking at relationships and saying what is serving me and what is not. And really going down this road of living life on my terms. And when I say that, I don't mean, living at the expense of everyone else, but I didn't want to harm anyone, but I absolutely wanted to start listening more to what my soul was telling me, what the universe was telling me. And so I've been very committed since then to create a life I'm madly in love with, right? To do the things that make me feel good, bring me happiness, bring me fulfillment, ideally impact others in that process, but to live more from that perspective than, I don't know about you or if you can relate to this, but I often talk about the formula, right? I followed the formula. I went to school, I got good grades, I worked hard, I climbed the ladder, and I arrived in this place. And then I recognized that wasn't my formula. The things that were supposed to make me happy weren't making me happy. And so really it was embarking upon this journey of, okay, how do I pursue the things that I desire? How do I create my own unique art in this world? And by art, I mean everything from relationships to the work that I do, right? How do I do things in a way that's unique and authentic to me and speaks to my heart? And ideally, like I said, has impact on others and helps others along the way. That's incredibly important to me. But it was more important to follow my own formula and to follow my own path. And so ever since that day, and I think well before that, like I mentioned, but specifically since that day, I've really been on this path to continually align things in my life and to help others do the same through my coaching or speaking or my leadership of teams or whatever it is that I'm doing. And so I'm happy to report that I would say now I'm probably more comfortable in my own skin than I've ever been. And, often people ask me the formula, like, how does one be more happy? How do you be more fulfilled? And I wish that it was more of a revelation or I had something more profound to share with you. But the short answer is do more of the things that you love and less of the things that you don't. And that may sound crass and flippant, but I think it's really that simple, right? Often we do things that we don't want to do, or how many times have you had this experience where maybe you're invited to dinner and you're like, you know what, I really don't want to go for dinner, but I'll say yes. I don't want to be rude or I don't want to be impolite, right? And I found through doing that over time, it was just whittling away at my soul, right? And so now I'm a little more discerning about when to say yes, when to say no. And like I said, I don't want to hurt anyone in the process, but I know that I think the way that I can make the biggest impact in this world is by being true to myself, right? And if I'm living in a more authentic way, I'm feeling more comfortable in my own skin, then I think I give permission to others to do the same. In particular, through my coaching, if I can help people come to those conclusions on their own, or like, what lights you up? What do you want to do more of? Then, I feel, again, that makes me feel good, but I feel like I'm doing my job in the world. And so that's really why I'm here talking about radical reconnection. I have two beautiful guests that are going to share their perspective on living life authentically and what that means to them. And I'm really excited for you to hear from them. And then absolutely we'll have time for questions. And I want to come back as well and tell you about an opportunity that we have coming up for some deeper connection, and something I'm super excited about. And when I talk about art and creation, this is something that's been welling up inside of me for some time, and I've been hearing those whispers. But again, another example of how those whispers became much louder, the signs became much louder, and I've been listening to them. So I can't wait to tell you about that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to our first guest, Neila Ramsingh. And Neila, I met at an event in Toronto a couple of years ago, and she's a beautiful soul, and I think you'll agree. And I can't wait to hear from you, Neila. And please, you and I have talked a lot about authenticity and happiness and fulfillment, and how each of us accomplish that a little differently, I think, but just love to hear from you. So over to you, Neila.
All right. Thank you, Cal. Thank you for having me on this conversation, which I think is very important for all of us. I have met Cal a year ago, and we have connected. Him and Veronica, we met during a seminar that we went to. That connection, it was real and authentic to me. I felt that connection within my heart. As people walk through our lives, we connect, we meet, we forget. But when you listen directly within your heart, and I don't mean just keep talking and thinking what to answer next, really connect to your heart, and you will know that that person that you meet is authentic connections. And I value this connection that I met with Carl and Veronica last year, and we continue to converse. We met another time in Toronto. We're going to meet up again a few times more this year. But what does this mean for me having these connections? These connections allow me to learn to grow, because I came from a very, which all of us has a past story that we have. But how do we find our purpose and be authentic and real to ourselves? And this is meeting people that we can connect with. So, a little bit about myself. My name is Neila Ramsingh, and I am an immigrant to Canada from Guyana. I've been through a lot of traumas in my life. And then the question came, there have to be more to this life than what I'm living. I grew, I take courses, and I educate myself, empower myself. But there is still something missing, because I continue looking for outside world to validate my connection and my purpose. All along, my purpose was sitting right inside me, and I could not find it. But I did find it, because my survive, being a survivor of suicide, I asked, what is the purpose of my life? The purpose that I find is being authentic to myself and connecting with others. My Everything that I do now is pertain to saving lives. But everybody has to have their own connection within themselves. I have been going through my journey of healing. I became an author, a life coach, a speaker. But these things would not have happened if I didn't walk the path of connecting with everybody that comes. Some people come to us and they teach us lessons and they go away. Some come to us and be involved in our life and they stay, ups and downs, and we grow together. This community here, with a few of us here, this is what we're getting together and making a difference. And the first thing that I would like to talk about is being present, being there for someone, Being present doesn't mean I'm listening to you, it means I'm feeling. Whatever it is that you're telling me, I'm feeling. Uh, this may get a little bit emotional for myself. My moment came to me to find my purpose is I was sitting in my car, and it was the day that I thought that everything will end for me, and the world basically stopped while I was sitting there, and I was the only one in there in my car, and the world had stopped. The moment for me is when I hear my own voice telling me that I'm here for a purpose. What it would it be it like to be alive, not just living, being alive? What would that be like? With those few voices that I heard, that is the switch and the turning point for me to live the life that I was meant to live, not for anybody, but for me. We all pay attention to our environment. Our environment created us the way that we need to go, or so we think. Why do we wait for something to happen? Hit her over the head. Something has to happen to us before we realize that there's more to us than living a life that our environment wants us to live. We need to understand within. As soon as you understand and feel from your heart, you must feel from your heart. Without feeling that heart connection with a person, it is not a real connection. But when you start listening, you start to feel. And feeling is where the happiness comes in for yourself and the person you're connecting with. If you think about it, if somebody feels right that connected to you, that is that is where you want to embrace that person. These are why connection with the right people are there. I had many people that showed up in my life, but I couldn't be who I am. I couldn't share my story authentically on stage. So I refused those stages, because if I can't be real to myself, then I cannot be real for you. And wholeheartedly, I embrace my path of walking, being vulnerable, showing up for people who needs us, being authentic to yourself first of all, because you cannot be there for someone else. Being alive and finding my purpose is the one of the things that now I devote my life to helping others live their life without reliving their past. Because you can live a full, authentic life without reliving your past. I appreciate that this moment that Cal has give myself in connecting with him, as this is a real connection that I have that I cherish every single day. Meeting Cal in Toronto opens a door for me to show my true self and be authentic to the audience that we're speaking to right now. And one of the things that I would like to have this conversation is everything that you want to change within yourself. It has to be with you. I have never thought that 5 years ago I will be an author of a book, because I couldn't even speak. I would be a speaker. But I had overcome all the trauma that I went through and share my story. I find my voice, speak my truth. And it's people like Cal that give me an outlet that I'm able to do that. And with my heartfelt appreciation, Cal, I thank you for inviting me to this stage. And I appreciate all of you who is online listening. I will now pass the meeting over to John.
Well, thank you, Neila. It's very inspiring. I just love listening to you. And thank you, Cal, for the opportunity to participate in this. This is just a really rich conversation we're having here today. And in listening to you, Neila, it brings to mind one of my favorite quotes ever from Helen Keller, who said that the most important things in our lives cannot be seen. They can only be felt and experienced with the heart. And she used examples like love, happiness, connection. You don't see these things, but you sure as heck know when they're there and they're not there. You feel them. That's the level we're operating at when we're talking about connection. And in thinking about this opportunity today, I started doing a little bit more um, digging and gathering some information that I'd heard about. And I'd like to begin with, why connection? Why are we talking about connection? And why is it important? One of the things that I've been really interested in for a long time is human longevity. I want to live longer. There's, you know, um, there's some fascinating work being done on human longevity. There's people. It's a multi-billion, probably $1 trillion, almost global industry in people, whether they're going to clinics or buying things or whatever. Everybody, they want to live longer, live healthier, live better, live happier. The most well documented overtime study ever done on the sources of human longevity was the Harvard study, which some people may have heard of or not. It was a study on human longevity done by, it was begun by Harvard researchers in 1938, and they followed 268 people. And they're still following. There are still some of them alive. Some of these people are in their hundreds. These are graduates of Harvard University, and they started with the proposition of what are the important factors? What are the key factors that come into play that most significantly impact human longevity? And yeah, they're all there. Things like exercise and diet and genes, and they looked at everything. But here's what's very profound about it. By a significant margin, the biggest single factor, and this was the conclusion of the study, and it's still ongoing, but the conclusion to this point, in whatever, almost 90 years now, biggest single factor are connections that people that have them versus people that don't, the quality of those connections. There's the empirical evidence. And like Cal and Neila, I've had some significant events, probably the most profound of which happened just over a year ago, July 5th, 2024. I died. And I was dead for a period of time. I was non-responsive. And I survived, and I'm still here. And there have been several growth gifts that I've received from that experience. And some of the most profound ones have come in the area of human connection, because through most of my life up until then, I'd always had this big capacity to I could relate to people and love you and love this person. But I had a very difficult time of letting anybody love me. It was very hard for me to receive love from anyone. And probably the biggest single factor that contributed to my survival from the accident that I had was the love of people who cared about me. I could feel it. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. My throat was paralyzed on one side, and I wasn't supposed to live. And the doctor said, well, told my partner to, gather the family because he's probably not going to be here tomorrow. We went through all of that. But I could actually feel at an energetic level the love of people. And I mean, without going into too much detail, I had congregations praying for me in Europe, in Mexico, in South America, in North America. It was unbelievable. And notes and letters and cards and tables full of flowers, people that really cared. And I couldn't ignore it. It was so overpowering. And it was that love, that energy that I was able to let in for the first time in my life that actually gave me life. So I can certainly attest to the fact that at an energetic level, there is incredible power in connection, power to actually give and sustain life. And some of the experiences I had, and without, again, I don't want to go into too much detail today, but conversations that I had while I was dead with people who I knew who had died before me, it became very clear to me how we're all connected. We're all connected. We're connected while we're alive. We're connected after we're gone. The people that aren't physically with us are still there, and we can still connect with them, and they can still connect with us if we can dial into the frequency that they're broadcasting from. It became very clear to me that we are all branches of the same tree. Every single human being, we're all connected. We're all branches of the same tree. In fact, it goes beyond that. We're connected before we arise in this form. We're connected after we depart from this form. It's all energy. And Einstein proved 100 years ago that energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. You think about that for a minute, and that's been proven scientifically. In the quantum world, it's just all energy. It's just flowing on a river, and now we're on an island here, and we flow down to the next island wherever it goes. But it's all about that's radical connection. When Cal said, "Do you want to come on and talk about this program I'm putting together?" And I said, "Oh, okay, what's it called?" He said, "Radical Connection." And I said to Cal, I said, "Okay, I got it." I said, "Cal, be careful what you ask for, because you want radical connection. I can talk about radical connection at a whole bunch of different levels." And the experience of dying and seeing what it is like on the other side and then coming back was very profound, very in many, many ways. And it really has allowed me to appreciate more so about how can we become more connected? How can we access this field of energy that's out there, that's always been there and always will be there? I mean, Einstein's proved that too, that time is just an illusion. There is no time. Everything that could exist, has existed, will exist, is already in there in the quantum field. It already exists. There's no time. And I mean, this is all radical stuff. So, but we're talking about radical connection. And it is an incredible experience to wake up every day. And I find myself walking down the street, literally, I can feel people. I now feel people. I feel the energy. I don't even have to say anything to them. I'll look at them. They may or may not look at me, but I can feel them. We're all connected already. We are born into connection. We come into this world in connection. And then what happens is a whole bunch of things get in the way of us experiencing that authentic connection. And I think that's where the real work is. It's not so much about, well, how do I learn how to connect more? How do I learn to be better at connecting? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that if you want to pursue that. To me, it's more about what is in the way of allowing me to be more connected. It's not about getting something, learning something new, finding something out. It's about removing the barriers that I've put in the way of connection. That's the area that I'm working in and working on a new book talking about as well. Incorporating that is, it's about giving stuff up, not finding something out or finding something new. It's about what is in the way, what can I give up? It's a very different perspective in approaching the question about radical connection. I think that's all I got to say about that for now, Cal. I'm going to turn it back over to you. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Wow. John, Neila, thank you both. I'm just so grateful for both of you and for the connection. And you're so right, John. Like, we are all connected, but stuff gets in the way of that. And you know, for years I felt disconnected. I always felt disconnected. Well, why don't I belong? And why do I feel weird? And it was all the conditioning and stuff that was piled on that. And now I recognize that I always have been connected and we've been connected. But like you said, what do you have to give up? What do you have to get out of the way in order to, you know, reconnect with your connection, if that makes sense. So thank you so much for what you shared, and Neila, what you shared. And we'll come back together here, the entire group of speakers. But I think one thing I'm hoping that our viewers and listeners are taking away is the three of us had to have some fairly radical events happen in order to put us on this path of reconnection. Myself getting struck by lightning, Neila being close to taking her life, John actually dying. And so we have got some stark messages from the universe, but I'd like to think that you out there, hopefully you can start thinking about this without having such profound experiences, or without having to get the 2x4 in the head, to listen to the little voice, to reconnect, to do the things that make your heart feel good. And so I want to share with you an example recently for me of what happens when you listen to the voices, when you are present to the connections that we already have, to John's point. And so one thing that I've wanted to do for a few years now is host a retreat that's all about connection, about connecting with each other, connecting with a magical place, and most importantly, connecting with our hearts and our souls and what's important to us. And I wanted to bring together this group of people, beautiful souls, to do just that. I've had a lot of retreats through mentors of mine, and they've always been profound, right? To get ourselves out of our regular environment, go somewhere new, put away the device for a bit, and just really reconnect. And so when I was thinking about this event, the name Radical Reconnection came to mind. And it, again, the catalyst for my reconnection has been fairly radical. Maybe yours doesn't have to be as radical, but I think reconnection is so critical. And so when I was thinking about this retreat, I want to tell you a little bit of a story of how it came to be, and how, for the first time in a long time, for me at least, when I listened to those voices, when I actually trusted, when I gave up having to control where things were going and having a little faith that they're going to go where they need to go, what can happen? And so, like I mentioned, I've been thinking about this retreat for a few years now, and very excited about what's coming to fruition. But there was a time when I was planning the retreat and I was all up in my head, and I was like, how am I going to do this? And there's some things I really want to experience with people. I want to do some breath work, and I want to hike, and I want to get on the water, and I want to do all these things, but I have no idea how to do it, and getting frustrated. And then, like most humans, fear and doubt creeping in about, how can I do this? Is this even a good idea? Who am I to reconnect? Can I bring people together? And all of these things. And I was literally working at home, my little acreage on Vancouver Island, and I was a little bit up in my head, to be honest. And I got a call from St. Jean's Cannery. John will know this place. So we do a lot of fishing and hunting and gathering of our own food. And so I took some salmon to St. Jean's, and they do a beautiful job of canning it, smoking it, and then canning it. And so I got a call saying, your salmon's ready, come pick it up. I said, okay, good. Just let me get away from my desk and get out of my head, and I'm going to go pick up my salmon. And so I get in the car, drive to the end of the road, and I'm just about to turn to go to the cannery, and this golden eagle swoops down out of a tree and literally comes within 8 feet of my car, and he fans at the last minute and shows me his belly and his wingspan. And I instantly, at that moment, I just had this sense of calm come over me and thought, okay, get out of my head. And I thanked him. I said, thank you, brother, for allowing me to see the bigger picture and for realizing that we are connected to everything, to John's point earlier, not just to each other as humans, but every living creature, everything on the planet. And so I just had this profound experience seeing this golden eagle. It's pretty rare to see a golden eagle, period, but to see one 8 feet from the front of your car was certainly a new experience for me. So anyway, so I go, I'm literally buzzing, and I go to the cannery and I walk in, and there's an Indigenous woman working there, and she looked at me and said, Cal, are you okay? And I said, oh yeah, I'm really okay. And I told her what had happened. And she said, well, the eagle's, he's showing you something. He's giving you a sign. And she pointed to the pendant. And I don't know if you can see my pendant here, but I designed this several years ago. And it's in the shape of a yin and yang symbol. And one is an eagle and one is a bear. And she pointed at the pendant and said, the eagle is telling you something. And I'm like, okay, again, maybe not the smartest man, but I get it. I believe I know what they're trying to tell me. And I felt it was about the retreat. And you know what? Sometimes you just have to go. You just have to do. You have to do what your heart is telling you to do. And so I pick up the salmon. I go back. I finish my work day. And it's one of the hottest days of the year. And so I thought I would go for a swim. And I do a practice called Qigong, which is kind of like Tai Chi. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go do my practice and have a swim. And so I go to this little beach near the farm, and I'm doing my practice. And sometimes I have my eyes closed. Sometimes they're open. When I have my eyes closed, I open them as I'm doing my practice. And I see a bald eagle this time flying along the edge of the beach right in front of my eyes. And I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me now. Like, what is happening here? And so again, I'm just like feeling this sense of connection and feeling like, okay, I get it. I get things are flowing, and I don't understand what's happening, but I'm going with it. So I go back to doing my practice. I close my eyes again, open my eyes, and now a second golden eagle flies along the water in front of me going this way. And he goes up and perches in a tree and is watching me finish my practice. And like I mentioned earlier, to see a golden eagle, period, is pretty rare. To see one 8 feet from the front of your car is extremely rare. To see two in one day, another one flying right in front of me, I'm just mind boggled, right? And I'm just buzzing, and I'm getting this sense of, okay, this is what it feels like when you are in tune with your connection, when you're flowing, when you're not trying to figure it out or force things. And so I finish my practice, I go for a swim, and I noticed at that time that my wonderful partner, Veronica, had called me, but the cell reception where I'm at is terrible. And so I thought, well, I'll just call her when I'm on my way back to the farm. So finish my practice, go finish my swim, get in the car. I'm driving back and I finally have reception. So I call her and we're talking away. She's telling me about her day. And all of a sudden I scream, oh my God. And she's like, what? A third golden eagle. This one came out of the ditch right over the top of my car. And literally it's 4 feet from the windshield. And I apologized for my outburst. I said, I'm sorry. And she said, no, like, don't be sorry. And she also reminded me, she's very intuitive. And she said, those eagles are coming right to you. Like, you're not seeing them off in the distance. They're coming at you. And so that was on a Tuesday. And that coming weekend, her and I were supposed to go together to Ucluelet, which is on the west coast of Vancouver Island, where I want to host the retreat. And we were going to go together, but I think her being very intuitive, she said, and you go ahead. I have work to do, so you should go. And I think what she knew is I needed to go on my own and follow this path wherever it was taking me. And so I mentioned there was all these things I wanted to do. And I had it in my mind. I had it in my mind from the trails we were going to hike to the beach that I wanted to take people to, where we would do breath work, to another small private beach where we would do like a fire ceremony and release some stuff, let some stuff go. I wanted to do some work with local First Nations. I wanted to get out on the ocean and give people a different perspective that they may not have had. And I thought it would be super cool if we could work with the nation to do a traditional barbecue on the beach, salmon barbecue, where they cook the old way on the fire. And so I wanted to do all these things, but I had no idea how this was going to come to fruition. And so I literally went to Ucluelet, and I was just no real plan, but just following that voice, following my heart, following my soul. And I went into this little gallery, and I met two of the coolest people I've ever met, two Indigenous gentlemen. I was there for 2.5 hours, and I told them what I was up to, and I told them about the retreat. And one of the things, again, I said, I'd like to get people out on the water. And the one gentleman said, well, I don't know if you know this, but Timmy here, he does Indigenous culture tours on the water. And I said, I didn't know that, but thank you. Like, that seems like, again, the universe just bringing me there. And then I said, I don't know if anybody does this in your nation any longer, but I'd love to do a traditional salmon barbecue. And he said, you're looking at probably two of the best people equipped in our nation to do such a thing. And so, so I left literally at the end of that day, and everything that I had dreamt about and envisioned and wanted to experience with this group of beautiful people had come to fruition. And it just, probably for the first time in my life, to that extreme where I thought, it can be this simple, right? It can, if we stay connected, if we stay listening, if we follow our hearts, this is what can happen. And so I'm very excited to say that October 23rd to 26th, we're doing what we call a Radical Reconnection Retreat in Ucluelet, British Columbia. Neila is going to be there. There's a few other people that have already signed up. I want to keep it very small, probably maximum of 12 people. And the idea really is to radically reconnect, right? To set aside the devices, connect with each other, connect with the beautiful, magical space, which is the west coast of Vancouver Island. And that in itself, just the planning of this retreat for me has been incredibly spiritual and transformational, just what's unfolded. And so I absolutely cannot wait to share that with others. And so if this is something that you're interested in, please reach out to me directly. You can reach me via email, cal@highperformanceculture.ca. You can connect with me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Email is probably the best. Like I said, cal@highperformanceculture.ca. But I'm just so excited about how this has come together in such a beautiful, magical way. And it's that feeling of connection. It's the feeling of when we listen, when we follow the universe, when we listen to the signs, this is how things can come to be. And so thank you for whoever put that in the comments. And so, yes, I'm super excited about that. Would love to have you come join us. If you want to learn more about it, please reach out directly. I'm happy to chat. And with that, Jayne, I'm not sure if you can bring us all back together. There we are, beautiful souls. Yes, so the retreat aside, I hope this conversation has been of value. I hope that you don't wait any longer for the things that you want to see in life, for the connection that's already there. Seek it out, reach out to people. I connected with Neila a year ago, and as she mentioned earlier, we're still connected. John, I'm going to steal John's saying. He said we've probably been connected since trees were little, but it's interesting how life ebbs and flows, and I don't think we've ever not been connected, but you get busy, you do your own thing, you come back, you reconnect, and you reconnect for a reason. And so John and I have recently been talking about some other exciting things that we want to do in the world, and this idea of helping others connect, and yeah, more to come on that. But again, just reconnecting, John, in that regard has been so cool. And so yeah, I just want to thank you both. I don't know if there's anything else you want to share. I don't know if anyone has any questions they want to put in the comments, but would love to hear from you. And hopefully this has been of value. Hopefully it's got you thinking about life and living life more authentically, connecting. And I'm going to mention it one more time because it's one of my favorite sayings is the problem is you think you have time. I thought I had time. And when I'm lying on the road beside my truck looking up at the sky, I realized I don't have much time. And not to sound morbid, but it's, what are we waiting for? Why would we put things off when we can connect now, when we can do the things that our hearts are calling us to do now? Why wait? And so when I heard from the Eagles, when I really sat with what this all meant and what came to me, the saying just kept coming. It kept repeating itself over and over again. It's time. It's time. It's just time. Right. And we can get all up in our heads about why we can't do things, or why the timing isn't right, or I don't have enough money, or maybe when I retire, I'll be happy and then I can do the things I love. Like, there's all these reasons, but I would urge you to consider it's time. Now is the time. So Neila, John, any parting words of wisdom or thoughts? Or
One thing I would like everybody to, just a last word for everybody, because authentic connection is not about changing conversation. It's about changing lives. And that could only be started with you. Just you.
Love that. Thank you.
I have to say one thing. When we were getting ready to come on live with this session this afternoon, we were using a different format. Then we had to switch formats, and I got kind of a little bit upset because I normally have a different background that I use and everything else. This is my working environment. This is where I write, and I just, as you were speaking, Cal, came to the realization why it happened the way it did, because there's always a reason. There's always a reason. And so what's in the background here, and I've got them all over in this workspace because it inspires me, or four generations worth of parents, grandparents, great grandparents, and I'm connected with all of them, many of whom I've never met, but I am connected with them, and I hear them, and I communicate with them on a regular basis, because it's not about time or form. It's just a matter of dialing into the frequency, and you can communicate with anything that's ever been here, ever will be here. And what comes to mind, and just the last thing I'd like to share are three words that I read. This is a couple of years ago now, in Oprah Winfrey's book, Super Soul Sunday. And she said in one of her chapters, she said the most important three words any human being wants to hear are not "I love you." They are "I hear you." And connection, radical connection, is just about being willing to really listen, whether it's to yourself, your own heart, or to any other energy that may be out there, whether it's eagles, or I've had experiences with birds and whales and all kinds of different animals, and etc. And when we can locate ourselves from a place of authentic listening, everything changes.
Thank you, John.
That's connection.
It's a reminder too that, you know, we create spaces like the retreat, for example. We create spaces like this conversation, this live event. But connection opportunities are everywhere, right? They're when you go to the grocery store, when you hold a door for someone, when you see them, when you smile at them, right? When you say, I see you, I see you. So thank you for that. And again, I think you talked about whether it's connecting with yourself. That's probably for many of us are really good at connecting with others, helping others, but how often do we connect with ourselves? And so, you know, I would encourage people to, whether that's go out in nature, go for a walk, meditate, whatever it is for you, whatever it takes for you to reconnect with your heart, you know, take that opportunity. I see Anthony says in the chat, you know, thanks for sharing your story. I think it brought all of us closer to each other. And thank you to the amazing two other speakers. That would be John and Neila. You know, Anthony, I met 15 years ago. We've stayed connected. We come and go out of each other's lives, but it's this example of we are connected. We can be connected. And sometimes it's just the reminder to purposefully reconnect, to take the time, make that call, reach out to that person, tell someone you love them, tell them that you hear them. So thank you, John. Thank you, Neila. Thanks for all that are listening. Thank you, Jayne, in the background, for taking care of the tech stuff and keeping us on track. And with that, please remember to reconnect.
Thank you. Thank you.